Hiya, Chelsea. You alright? Yep. Perfect.
You're right.
Yeah, not too bad myself. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad it's Friday. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Wine.
Sounds good. We'll just wait for a couple of people to join and then we'll get started. That was the smoothest transition of all week. Every other day there's been a few technical difficulties.
I think that's been the theme for the past year, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. If we just get started in a second and then anyone joining can ask any other questions that they have, perhaps that they missed.
Yeah, of course.
Do you get interviewed very regularly, would you say, for this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I do. Well, I wouldn't say interviewed regularly, but I do quite a lot of stuff sort of around becoming a barrister and being a barrister, because there is sort of a stereotypical view of a barrister, and I don't think I fit that mold.
Yeah.
I do try and sort of, put myself out there. I don't come from sort of the stereotypical barrister background. So I do try and get out there and speak to as many people as I can, just sort of to motivate them and inspire them to come to the bar, because you don't have to come from that kind of background to make it, as long as you work hard enough, put the effort in. Nothing's out of reach, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. So if we just go ahead and get started now. So if you just want to start off with a bit of introduction about yourself, how many years in practice you've had, where you come from.
So I am a common law practitioner at Park Square Barristers. I started pupillage in 2018. I got offered tenancy in 2019, and since then the rest is history, so to speak. But before that, I was a professional dancer, and I also had my own cafe. So I did a proper flip around in terms of career. I had a little girl, which motivated me to go back to law school and sort of get my life in gear.
Yeah, definitely. I just had a quick question coming already. Hi, what route did you take to get to the bar?
So I didn't go to a particularly great school, didn't have great GCSEs. I didn't do A-levels. I did a BTEC National Diploma in Public Services, because I didn't know that was any different to A-levels. So when I went to go to law school, I didn't have enough UCAS points. I had to do the first year of law school part-time, because that's the only way that I could get in. Then in the second year, I transferred to full-time, which meant I had to do a year and a half's worth of work in 1 year.
Wow.
And after that, did the BTEC National Diploma. No, I didn't. I did the bar professional training course.
Yeah. You were going back else.
Going back.
So if you could briefly just tell myself and all the viewers what your job is, could you summarise it really?
Yeah, so I'm a barrister. I represent people in court. My clients are solicitors. I specialise mostly in employment law, but I do some commercial litigation, chancery litigation, and some personal injury. So the job of a barrister is essentially you prepare the case and you talk for the client in court, you do cross-examination, examination in chief, and do all the advocacy essentially. You don't do sort of background work, what you would find a solicitor does, so you don't have much lay client contact. Our contact is mostly with professional clients, so solicitors.
Yep. So you touched on at the start that you say you wouldn't fit like the traditional idea of a barrister. What would you say are some common misconceptions that people have about the work that you do?
Generally, when people think of a barrister, they think of a middle-aged, white, upper-class male.
Definitely.
I was actually in my local shop the other day, and the guy behind the counter said to me, "Oh, are you at work?" So I had my suit on, and I said, "Oh yeah." And he said, "Oh, are you an accountant?" I said, "No, I'm a barrister." So he said, "Oh, you work for a barrister?" I said, "No, I am a barrister."
Wow.
"Oh, you don't look like one."
Wow. Wow. That's definitely a massive misconception then. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously you don't need to fit that stereotypical view to be a good barrister, or just, well, not necessarily a bad barrister, but to just get into the industry. But would you say there's any like main skills that you would need to become quite a good barrister?
Well, the majority of barristers are self-employed, so you definitely have to have a business mind, because you need to be able to sustain yourself and go out and get work and network and build relationships with professional clients. So, having a good business mind and knowing what it means to be self-employed. I think a lot of people think, a barrister's a great job and, the money's just there. That isn't the case. You really need to know what you're signing up to, and you need to work hard, essentially. But you also need to be resilient, I think, because the industry is so competitive. Getting pupillage is it's like gold dust, and there are so many fantastic people out there, going for those positions, and there isn't many positions available in comparison to how many students actually qualify. So you definitely do need to be resilient, because you do get no after no after no, but it only takes one set to say yes. And confidence, because you are going to go into a court, you're talking to some of the most intelligent people in the country, you're against some of the most intelligent people in the country, so you definitely need to be confident, and confident in yourself.
Yeah, massively, definitely. I just had another quick one come in. Do you think that it's harder for women to reach the bar based on those stereotypical conceptions that people have?
Years ago, I think that was right. But I do think now the figures are sort of tending to suggest that there are more females coming to the bar. However, there are less females reaching the top positions. So, your Supreme Court judges and things, although we do have Lady Hale. But coming to the bar as a woman is not as hard. But if you want to progress, I think the bar still has some issues there.
Yeah, that's definitely would agree with you on that one. So can you tell us a bit about some of the main benefits of your job, would you say?
Being self-employed, I've got a little girl, so having control over my diary, picking days that I want to have off when I want to have them off, was a massive thing for me. But also, one of the reasons I chose the bar instead of being a solicitor is because your success is based on your own merit. So if you are a solicitor and you're working for a firm, for example, if you do well, you're doing well in the name of the firm. Whereas if you're a barrister and you do well, you're doing well in your own name.
Yeah, definitely. You're able to almost reap your own benefits, whereas have someone else take them. So what advice do you give to someone who is wanting to break into the career of a barrister?
Do your research. 100% do your research, because it isn't for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and say it is for everybody. It is hard work. It's late mornings, late nights, early mornings, no weekends, but it is a great job. But yeah, definitely do your research and try and get as much experience as you can at the bar. Having legal experience is a great thing, but I don't think that necessarily opens your eyes to what the bar is about. So definitely getting experience is a must. Obviously, it's really difficult in these days because there isn't much experience out there.
Definitely. So obviously we've talked about how you've got to where you are and that. Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time, would you say?
Well, I would like to think that I have a steady practice. I do want to work towards becoming a employment judge. So hopefully, maybe not in 10 years' time, but hopefully I will be, working towards getting the experience to become an employment judge.
Definitely, wow. What is the best advice to applying for a mini pupillage, almost gaining that experience, like you said?
Yeah, it's really difficult at the moment because I know a lot of chambers have put their mini pupillage applications on hold. But that being said, I think now is a great time, particularly, you know, if you haven't got time to travel, you can just, you know, ring the court, because all court hearings are still public. And if you ring the court and say, you know, can I have a link? I've seen a case and I think I'm interested in it. The court will send you that, so you can get that experience even while you sat at home.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, you know, if your name comes up and a barrister sees your name, they see that you've been using your initiative and you've been innovative. So I think, you know, just getting your name out there for people to see, but it's really difficult at the moment. But I always say, you know, don't ask, don't get. LinkedIn is a massive tool for law students. I got so much work experience through LinkedIn because I was just cheeky, essentially. If I saw a barrister that did some kind of work that I was interested in, I just used to send them a message saying, you know, do you mind if I come and tag along with you? 9 times out of 10 they said yes. Yeah,
amazing. I feel like you definitely have to put yourself out there to get back what you want.
Yeah, that's it. And you know, if you are approaching them, then obviously you're showing them that you are interested in them. And barristers do generally want to help people. They're not, you know, they're not unapproachable. As people would think. But I was always taught at law school, you know, don't add a barrister unless they've told you to add them on LinkedIn. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, definitely. How has your job changed in the during the pandemic?
Oh, it's changed so much. I am sick of seeing these falls. But in reality, it's actually changed for the good, because my practice has now widened. So usually I would only practice on the northeastern circuit, which is between sort of Grimsby up to Newcastle. But now, because everything's virtual, I'm in London, I'm in Newcastle, up and down the country. So my practice has widened. Now I can do sort of 2 trials a day, whereas before, because of the commute, you could only fit 1 trial in. So it's working really well, and I do think the courts are sort of going to stick with virtual hearings for the smaller matters. But then again, I think, you know, when things go back to normal, I'm not sure I'm going to have time to fit in travel.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. You've almost become accustomed to it at home that you have to adjust back to pre-COVID. Just touching on again, really, about how, because I imagine that quite a lot of people, our viewers and myself, are going into the legal industry and perhaps will go down the barrister route. If we just talk through how you, once again, in a bit more detail, how you've got to where you are. So you said you didn't do your A-levels. Can you tell us a bit about, like, did you find that was a massive challenge for you that you didn't do your A-levels?
Yeah, I did. Because when you're applying for pupillage, you're up against some of the people, you know, that have been to some fantastic schools, and their application form is A star, A star, A star, A star, and yours is BTEC National Diploma. And I didn't even do very well in the BTEC National Diploma either.
Great.
So I did find that a massive struggle. But then I also was a mature student. I'd had my own business. I'd worked in solicitors' firms, and I knew that I needed to make my application stand out because of those grades. Essentially, I needed to make up for that. So I tried to do as much legal work experience as I could. I used to volunteer for solicitors' firms 1 day a week for the whole year, just so that I could gain experience. And not only that, I then gained contacts. So I did a work placement at a solicitor's firm in Leeds, where I was placed with their employment solicitor. I'm now really good friends with that employment solicitor, and she now sends me work.
Wow, amazing.
So if you do think that there's something on your application form that's probably not going to be up to scratch, if I can put it that way, then you definitely need to go out and be doing things to make up for it. But I definitely thought it was a struggle. And people mentioned it to me as well. You know, why have you got these grades? Why did you pick a BTEC National Diploma? And it's because I went to a school that didn't have anybody that had gone on to higher education, and that sort of thing wasn't advocated for. So well, I'm not going to say it's not my fault, because you've got to go out there and research for it. But I think it's difficult if you don't come from a background that's, where your parents went to university, for example. My parents didn't go to university, so I didn't have that knowledge open to me. So I think it is difficult.
Yeah, massively, definitely. So obviously, you ended up getting into university in that. Can you tell us where you did your LLB and your Bptc?
Yeah, so I went to Leeds Beckett University to do my LLB. Yep. I graduated there with a first class in law. I then went on to the bar professional training course at the University of Law in Leeds.
Yep, amazing then. Obviously quite northern then.
I am. I'm a Yorkshire girl.
Yeah.
Through and through.
How did you find that your LLB compared with your bar practice training contract?
Oh, it was a massive wake-up call. So if you think of exam week at undergrad degree, bar school is like that every week. There was so much reading. I mean, one of the books for civil litigation was sort of about that thick. And you had to get through. The reading was just immense. The note-taking was immense. My social life was non-existent. And sleep, who needs sleep anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, God.
But saying that, it was really hard work. But the bar year was probably one of the best years of my life.
Amazing.
It was great. I met some great people, because when you're at undergrad degree, you're sort of surrounded by people. Some of them are just there just because they're just there. You've got people that sit in the background and don't really talk. You've got a few people that sort of answer the questions and things. But when you get to bar school, everybody is that person that answers the question. And everybody's vocal and everybody's competitive, and it makes you more motivated and it makes you more competitive to do well. So it's fantastic experience.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Did you always know that you were going to go for perhaps the more barrister route as opposed to a solicitor?
No, I didn't. I never really thought that I was going to go into a law career. I was a dancer before. I wanted to be a professional dancer. That's what I wanted to do. But then I fell on pregnant, so that sort of scuppered my plans there. But when I went to law school, I can remember the very first day, the head of law asked the question, who wants to be a solicitor? And pretty much every student raised their hands. And then they said, who wants to be a barrister? And I put my hand up because I thought, I don't want to be, like everybody else, and was sort of being awkward, really. But ever since that day, I thought, well, why can't I be a barrister?
Yeah.
And I think...
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely the stereotypical views of a barrister. And the more that people said to me, you won't make it, you're not fit for it, you don't fit the mould, that sort of motivated me more to prove everybody else wrong.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine you definitely want to prove everyone wrong. Just had 2 questions come in. Best tips for keeping up with reading and best tips for standing out.
Keeping up with reading, learn to skim read.
Yeah.
take it in. I don't think there is I always have to read things sort of a couple of times. So for me, it was really difficult. But I would definitely say, when I first started bar school and they said, make sure you take your notes right from the beginning, because if you don't, you're going to be sort of, screwed when it comes to the end, when you're starting to revise for your exams. And when I first started, I thought, I can remember this. And I didn't start note-taking. And then I got halfway through the course and thought, oops, definitely should have started note-taking. But luckily, I had a lovely girl on the bar course that provided her notes to me. So the best bit of advice that I can give is just start making very good notes right from the beginning. And it depends on what type of learner you are. So I learn better if I write something out and colour it in and do sort of mind maps and things like that. But to be honest, it depends what sort of work you are. But colours work great for me. Highlighters are my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And your best tips for standing out?
Confidence. I don't think anything replaces confidence in terms of standing out. It's really difficult, I think, on the bar course to stand out because everybody's confident. But I think maybe you need to be a little bit different. I'm not one of these people that tries to follow the crowd. I always want to stand out. And I think it just depends on the crowd that you're involved with, how you do that. But definitely getting involved with everything. I was always there at extracurricular activities, always doing mooting, always getting involved with something. And I think that helps you stand out because you look motivated and you look enthusiastic.
Yeah, massively. We've touched quite a few times on the idea of a pupillage. Can you best define a pupillage for us?
So a pupillage is essentially a year of training. It's sort of akin to an apprenticeship. So you learn on the job. It's split into 2 sixes. So the first 6, you shadow another member of chambers. So you shadow another barrister. For 6 months, and usually they are sort of 25, 30 years call, so they're really experienced. Yeah. So for example, my pupil supervisor was 35 years call. He was doing multi-handed conspiracies, you know, murder trials and things like that. So I was shadowing him doing all these trials. And then after 6 months, sort of the day your 6 months end, the next day you're on your feet doing it yourself.
Wow.
For another 6 months. So the jump is massive. And it's really weird because you go from watching murder trials and conspiracy trials to in the magistrates dealing with low level shop theft, and you're like, hang on a minute, I've not learned anything about it. But yeah, it's a massive jump. But I think that the best way to learn is to jump in the deep end, isn't it? Head first.
Definitely.
Trial and error.
Oh, pardon?
Oh, I just said trial and error, sorry.
Oh, definitely, yeah, massively. How long after your training course did you secure your pupillage then?
It took me 2 years. So when you complete the Bptc, you only get 5 years to get pupillage. Otherwise, you have to take the course again, or you have to make an application for an extension. And I think applications for extensions are only really granted if you've been working in the legal sector. But it took me 2 years. It's a grueling process.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Pupillage interviews are horrendous. I don't put it that way. And I think, a lot of it is skill and a lot of it is what's on your CV, but a lot of it is also luck. When you think sort of Park Square at the chambers where I'm at, they have 200 tenants and they'll probably pick 3 of those tenants to interview the potential candidates. And it depends on whether you get on with those 3 people that are picked out of those 200. One year you might not click with anybody on the panel, but the year after it might be a different panel and you click instantly.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's human nature, isn't it, to get on with some people and not get on with others. So I do think there is some luck in it. So as I said before, you do have to be resilient and just think everyone's good. It's not that you were bad. It's just that, this is not the time, but it only takes one set to say yes. So just keep going.
Yeah, definitely. Just another one come through. Best tips for an interview.
I always used to have 5 points. So my best 5 points that I wanted to put across. So when they asked a question, I used to try and think of a way that I could get those 5 things that I thought made me stand out. But definitely Middle Temple has a document called Pupillage Interview Questions. They pretty much always came up. So definitely put those into a spreadsheet. Get yourself some banked answers, talk to yourself in the mirror, record yourself answering those questions, and just build your confidence. Do it in front of your family, do it in front of your friends. Research the panel if you can, research the chambers if you can. Just be honest and just be yourself. When I first started interviewing for pupillage, I started trying to be somebody that I thought they wanted to employ. That didn't work for me because I was being somebody that I wasn't. So definitely just be yourself. You know, these people are trained to judge people for a living, and if you're trying to be somebody that you're not, they're definitely gonna see through that. So just be yourself, be confident, and have fun with it.
Yeah, definitely. So almost in addition to that, what work experience would you say looks good before becoming a barrister?
It will depend, I think, on the area of law that you want to go in, the set that you want to go to. I think if you go into sort of a niche set, if you want to sort of specialise in employment law, for example, employment experience is great.
Yep.
If you want to go sort of to a common law set, then a wide range of experience is great. There are things, I can't remember the name of it now, you go to America and help on sort of death row. I can't remember what it's called, but things that are going to stand out, because most people will have paralegal experience. Most people will have mini pupilages. It's about putting something on there that the reader thinks, oh, you know, that's really interesting.
Yeah, amazing. You just mentioned there that some people have paralegal experience. Did you have any yourself before you went into the barrister role?
I did. So when I finished undergrad degree, I leased my cafe out to focus on the bar course. I then got a part-time paralegal role in a small set whilst I did the Bptc, and then once I'd finished that, I started there full-time as a litigation executive. Now, I chose a small firm because I knew in a small firm you'd get much more hands-on experience. Whereas if you go for sort of the larger sets, you're going to be doing mediocre, you know, administration work. So it really does depend on where you want to go. Because if you want to go to a larger set, then having experience in a larger set is going to set you in good stead. But again, it depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, I can well imagine. Pro bono cases, we have them at my uni, the death row one you mentioned. What is the best way to get into pro bono cases?
I think it depends again on where you're going. There are loads of agencies and companies out there that do pro bono work. A lot of them, however, have sort of criteria to meet. So I know that there's the Free Representation Unit in London that does social security tribunals and employment cases, but I think you have to have so much experience to get into those. Law clinics at universities are a great way to get into doing pro bono work, but definitely just research on Google. I know when I was at university, there was it was called No Going Back, and it was a agency that provided free legal advice to LGBT immigration asylum seekers.
Wow, amazing.
So you could do just sort of administration work. You couldn't really work on sort of any litigation or anything like that, but it's just a way to get your foot in the door. I just used to Google all sorts of pro bono work and just send them emails.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it comes with the sense that what we touched on before is you just have to put yourself out there, really.
That's it. Yeah, networking and things like that is a full-time job.
Yeah.
I don't know where I fit being a barrister in.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Can public still instruct barristers directly too?
Yes, they can. So I'm direct access qualified. You have to do a course to be able to take on clients on a direct access basis. It's good for employment law in particular, although it's really difficult to do direct access work when you're in court all day because you simply just don't have the time to run a case like solicitors do. But yeah, they can, but they can only instruct barristers that have done that course.
Oh, okay. Going back to pupils, really, how did you feel when you eventually started your practical training?
It was a bit surreal. You will have heard of imposter syndrome, and that doesn't go away. You sort of think, wow, you know, these people are trusting me, little old me, with, you know, this claim. It was a bit surreal, and I kept having to pinch myself. But then, you know, I kept reminding myself, I've worked hard to get here, and I've got here because I deserve it. But you do have to keep telling yourself that, because I still do suffer from imposter syndrome even now. So yeah, it was crazy. I was ecstatic.
Yeah, that's good though. That's good. Would you say it matters where you complete your pupillage, or is it just a case of just getting it, really qualifying wherever you can?
It is a case of just qualifying where you can, because they are so hard to get. But that
Yeah,
being said, I think if you go to, so for example, if you are a Yorkshire girl like I am, I interviewed at some sets in London, so 2 Bedford Row, I interviewed at, and when I went down there, they were like, are you going to stay here? You've
yeah,
got a family life in Leeds, you've got a little girl, you've got a house. How do we know that you're going to stay here? So
yeah,
when they ask you questions like that, if you don't have any intention of staying there and you don't have any connections there, then you're going to struggle anyway. And I think that they will see through the fact that
yeah,
you're just looking for pupillage and you don't care where it is. So I
yeah,
think a lot of sets want to know that they're going to invest their time and effort into you, that you're going to stay there. So I think you definitely need to have in mind that those types of questions will be asked.
yeah, massively, massively. Earlier this week, in our previous live interviews with law students, trainee, the defendant, the legal charity. Earlier this week, we discussed that the legal profession is almost an industry of who you know, not what you know. Did you feel like that was almost a case of when you were trying to get into pupillage and your your Bptc?
I think it is. I think it is in a way. However, as I said, I don't come from a background. My parents didn't go to
Yeah,
university. I didn't have any connections to the law, so I don't really think it's sort of. You know, my dad's a barrister, so I'm going to become a barrister. I think there is some of that, but I definitely think it is who you know. When I first did my first ever mini pupillage, I went with a gentleman called Nadeem Bashir. Now, when I went with him for a week, he said he was, you know, really impressed by the work that I'd done for him. So he invited me back on several other occasions, and I ended up staying with him and going on mini pupillages with him for about 3 or 4 years. And in
wow,
the end, he actually became my pupil supervisor.
wow,
And I
amazing.
think if it wasn't for me making that connection, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. So I think it is a case of who you know, but that doesn't mean that you can't go out and get to know those people.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Can you describe for us how you felt the day that you finally did become that practicing barrister?
It was a bit of an anticlimax, I'm not going to lie. Because you'd already been doing the work
Yeah,
for 6 months, you'd already been on your feet. It was just a bit of paper, but it was a massive relief, because you are set for life, and you know it is a career for life. But there wasn't any change. I didn't my practice didn't change overnight. I simply just went on doing the same things that I'd been doing for the past 6 months. But it was a massive relief,
yeah,
and obviously I was over the moon and could finally relax.
yeah. I can imagine.
That I didn't have to go through any more interviews or any more
Yeah,
applications or any more training or any more studying. It was great.
yeah. Finally, all that like hard work and determination actually paid off.
Yeah.
So we touched on at the start how barristers self-employed. Are all barristers self-employed?
No, not all barristers are self-employed. So you do get some employed barristers, but I think they only make up a tiny proportion of barristers.
Yeah. And how does it all work with regards to chambers, clerks, barristers? Do you have to pay rent to the chambers?
You do. So it will depend from set to set. They'll have different sort of payment structures. Usually it's a percentage of what you earn that you pay
Yeah,
to chambers. In terms of your clerks, they are the organ grinders essentially.
yeah,
Without them, your will doesn't go around. So if you are lucky enough to get pupillage, you know, definitely make an effort with your clerks. Buy them chocolates, buy them wine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you describe what your typical day would look to us, both perhaps maybe like in lockdown virtually and perhaps before, what your typical day would look like?
So, because I am a mum, I usually try and stay local on a normal day, not in lockdown. I try and stay local so that I can take her to school,
Yeah,
then drive to court, wherever that may be, have a conference with the client. Usually you sat round court waiting hours and hours
yeah,
before your cases called on, which is great. That's another reason lockdown is great, because you're not spending loads of time wasted sat in a court waiting room. And then after that, you then go back to chambers. You then prepare the files that you've just received for the next day. Yeah. You do a bit of work in chambers, then you go home, you have a bit of tea, then you do your papers again, and it probably finish sort of about 12 o'clock in the morning. In lockdown, it's mental, because now you're getting sort of 2 trials a day. So you get the papers generally at the lower end of the bar the day before the trial. Wow. So if you've got 2 trials the next day, it means you've got 2 trials to prep the night before. So it's been a lot of late nights.
Definitely not your traditional 9 to 5.
No, it's definitely not traditional 9 to 5.
Yeah. How much time would you say compared do you spend time in chambers and in court, really?
Majority of my time is spent in court. Because of the practice that I do, I have a lot of paper-based work as well. So that makes it even more difficult. Generally, I try and do my papers on a weekend because I am in court every day. Yeah. We don't really spend that much time in chambers now, because it's our chambers is closed. You can only book it out in certain circumstances. But usually after court, I would always try and go into chambers, and it's just about getting your face known, because you want to see some of the more senior tenants and members of chambers, because you want to sort of get those cases where you're being led by those people as well, because that's how you get career progression. And even, you know, when you become a tenant, it's still about getting your name out there and getting your face seen, and just saying to everybody, I'm still here. Yeah,
definitely.
But I do miss that at the minute, because it's a lonely profession, is the bar, because you are on your own, you're running the cases on your own, you're making the decisions by yourself. So it's really nice when you go into chambers to have that sort of ability to bounce off people and say, what do you think about this, or this just happened in my case. Whereas now, because we're not having that, I think it's a little bit more lonely. So I'm really looking forward to normal life resuming, whatever that will look like.
Yeah, definitely. Almost gonna have to be a bit careful what you say here, really. Would you say that judges are as grumpy as they come across, perhaps maybe in the news and the papers?
It depends who you're in front of, I think. Some of them are, but some of them are great. I think, again, it's a stereotypical view of a judge. The majority of them aren't like that. You do get the odd few that are set in the ways, if I can put it that way. But I've come across a few that I think you could have been a bit nicer. But
I guess that comes. Yeah, definitely. Do you think that the bar's traditional nature prevents maybe people with like lower income families from applying? Do you think that's a massive decisive factor in it?
100%, 100%. Because the cost of coming to the bar is ridiculous. I was lucky enough to get a major scholarship from Middle Temple to fund my bar course. If it wasn't for that scholarship, I wouldn't have been able to afford it. Now, I would have been able to go out and get a loan, but I'd already got sort of £70,000
definitely
loans. So it was very scary, but definitely if you've come, it's much harder, because having £70,000 worth of debt is eye-watering, isn't it? But when you're a student, you think it's free money, and then when you start working, you have to repay it. You're like, But I think it is definitely a bar to the bar, and hopefully one day that's going to be more easier for those people. But the inns are a massive help in that regard, because they have funds available for people in those positions, but they are based on merit, so that you do have to show that you're potentially going to make it, and that you've worked hard enough to receive it.
Yeah, definitely. Another factor which might be quite off-putting to people is the prospect of self-employment. Do you think that can be quite a big issue for people from maybe less prosperous backgrounds?
Being self-employed is always a worry, because you've got to do all your own self-assessments, you've got to put your tax away, you've got to be really savvy with money, you can't just spend it when it comes in. You have to sort of separate your finances in that regard. So I do think for some people self-employed isn't for everybody, being self-employed. So I do think it will put some people off. It's the nature of the beast, isn't it? I think if you are going to struggle as being self-employed, then you are limiting your chances of getting pupillage, because, as I said before, the employed bar is a tiny proportion of the amount of barristers. So if you do think that you are going to struggle being self-employed, then you might want to think of a different career. But that being said, you could always, go down the solicitor route, make yourself comfortable, gain your connections, and then transfer to the bar at a later stage. Or alternatively, if you want the comfort of being employed, you can always become a solicitor and do higher rights, which would allow you to do the advocacy in court, and you have the protection then of being employed.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have to pay tax in pupillage?
No. It's called a pupillage grant that you're paid. So you don't have to pay tax on that. So that's the first 6 months. But in the second 6 months, it depends how your pupillage is set up. So my pupillage was in the second 6 months. I was guaranteed earnings of £1,000 because that was classified as earnings. I had to pay tax on that. But some chambers just do the grant for the whole 12 months. Okay. So it depends.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Can you tell us a bit about what the Inns of Court are and what impact they may have on a career?
The Inns of Court are, as I say, I owe my whole career to the Inns of Court. Yeah. They were originally set up, I believe, to do the bar training, and then over time, I think it's changed. Yeah. They offer training to pupils. They offer training to barristers. It's sort of a professional membership. They do the scholarships for helping people. Yep, it sounds like they're doing great stuff, really. Yeah, they are great. They also do so before you can get called to the bar. So when you're the Inns, whatever member you are of, there's 4 different ones. I'm a member of Middle Temple, and when you qualify as a barrister, you're called to the bar. And when you're called to the bar, you do that ceremony at your inn. Yeah. My train of thought's gone now. I forgot what the point of my story was. Let's move on.
So,
it's been a long week.
Yeah. More recently, we've seen a growth in perhaps solicitor apprenticeships and obviously alternative ways to get into the more solicitor profession as opposed to traditional university routes. Do you think that the bar should be introducing something similar, perhaps a barrister apprenticeship?
I think it's difficult because of the numbers. So solicitors, the availability of positions to become a solicitor are much greater, whereas the ability to get pupillage is much smaller because there are less barristers. And I think an apprenticeship barrister qualification would be difficult in theory to teach. Yeah. Because the solicitor apprentice, you do your studying as well as doing the job. And I think that will be easier. But the fact that you're in court all day and you have to sort of soak up all the knowledge in respect of the case to study at the same time would be too difficult. In my opinion, I don't think it would work.
Okay, definitely. Just had quite a funny question come in. Can we please see your barrister wig?
Oh, it's in the boot of the car.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
A bit more serious now. Why does the bar struggle to retain female barristers, would you say?
Because it's really difficult for females, obviously want to go on and have families. And when you have a child at the bar, it is really difficult. So one of when you are a barrister, you are regulated by the Bar Standards Board. You have a code of conduct that you have to oblige by, and you have to put your client's interests first over your own. So, for example, last year I had a holiday booked with my little girl. It was the school holidays, and one of my cases went part heard, and the court listed it during my holiday. And obviously, because it had been part heard, I had to hear the case. So we made an application to have the case moved because I'd already had a pre-booked holiday, but the court said that they couldn't move it, and I had to attend, essentially. So that doesn't always work out like that. Some courts will move it. You know, it's a bit of give and take. But I think it's really difficult for females to run the house, look after the children, and have a busy practice because there isn't that flexibility at the bar. And it is difficult. And I think I did a newsletter for the Barrister magazine some time ago on this issue. There does need to be more understanding because, as we mentioned before, the majority of the judges are older, white, male.
Definitely.
And they don't necessarily know what it is to look after a family, to run a house, because without being disrespectful to them, they've probably had a wife that's done that. So
definitely
do 100% think there needs to be more understanding if the bar wants to retain those females.
Yeah, definitely. Almost to finish off, really, in case anyone has any other questions, and if you'd like to add anything else, really, do you have any advice or tips for law students which may assist them when applying for jobs this summer?
It's a bit of an open-ended question, but I think look to the future when you're applying for jobs. Don't just take a job because it's a job. If you are going to use the time productively, then you definitely want to put something on your CV that's going to matter when you're going on to apply for pupillage. So if you are interested in a particular area of law, then definitely go for those jobs that are in that area. Or, you know, try and do something that's a little bit outside the box. Yep. So when you go for pupillage interviews, everyone's going to have A-levels, everyone's going to have a law degree, everyone's going to have the Bptc. You want something on there that's your talking point. So if you can do something this summer, well, if we can do anything this summer, it's going to be great, isn't it? But if you can do something this summer that's your talking point on your CV, I think that will make you stand out. So if you can go on and do, you know, the thing in America, do something like that, or, you know, something that's going to stand out.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, question for me for a change. Has Chelsea persuaded you to become a barrister? Definitely to consider it more. There's a lot in there that I've learned that I obviously didn't know before. So yeah, definitely going to look at the two again and think, which one do I actually want to do?
Do you know, it's honestly, it is really hard to get into, but I think if you are willing to work and you want it hard enough, then you can make it. Nothing is out of reach. No dream is out of reach. And I think if you really put the work in and you really put the effort in because you want it that much, then you'll definitely make it. And I must say, it's a fantastic career. I wouldn't do anything else.
Yeah. Would you say that there's anything that you would change, like do any differently than you have done? Do you wish you'd change anything, really?
Sometimes I used to think to myself, oh, you know, I wish I'd have tried better at GCSE, or I wish I'd have done A-levels. But then I think if I had done those, I probably wouldn't have gone on and done the work experience, and the path might have worked out completely different. So I think I've got to where I am, and I've got to where I want to be. So no, I don't think I would. Yeah,
definitely. Have you mentioned Legally Blog? So obviously that's your amazing Instagram page.
It is, yes, Legally Blogged. So I blog about employment law. I also do some blogging to motivate and inspire and help students who want to break into the legal profession. So definitely give me a follow if you want to.
Yeah, definitely go over and check it out. Yeah. Any other questions? I'll just wait a couple of seconds for them to come in case there's a lag. But on behalf of me and all the team here at ClIP Careers, we're very happy to have you on, and I think you've been very beneficial to both myself and I hope to the people watching, really. Anything else you'd like to add in?
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Anytime.
And cheers.
Yes, very. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Don't think there's any more questions now. Thank you to everyone who's watched for our Insta Lives this week, our legal Instagram Lives. It's been a pleasure for me to be here. I've enjoyed every second of it, and I'm sure all of our guests, like Chelsea and everyone else, have enjoyed it as well. Thank you for attending, and that's all really.
Have a great weekend.
And you, thank you.
See you later. Bye.